Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Trade scenarios abound for the Minnesota Vikings. We get into all of them on today's mailbag edition with Reggie and Luke on the Minnesota Football Party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next-level Vikings football. So join in with Pro Football Network's Arif Hassan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talk's Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
What is up, everybody? It's a Wednesday morning. It's the mailbag edition on the Minnesota Football Party. I'm Sam Ekstrom, covering the Vikings here at Locked On Sports Minnesota. I'm at Sam Ekstrom on Twitter. Kare 11 Sports Director Reggie Wilson joins us every Wednesday. He's at Reggie Wilson TV on Twitter. And Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman, the usual sidekick. Lots to get into today. We've got some crazy trade scenarios that people have thrown out. We've got some a little more realistic trade scenarios that people have thrown out on Twitter. We're going to get into all of those. Luke and I are also going to try to shield ourselves from the arrows of the Twitter sphere that dislike our Hendon Hooker opinion. We will defend ourselves coming up here and get Reggie's take. But first, this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook partner of Locked On. Make every moment more at FanDuel and FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Luke, we're in some heat. We're in some hot water. On YouTube, the comment section, on Twitter, the mentions, they're blowing up. Because yesterday we endorsed Hendon Hooker as a potential first-round option to the Vikings. Now, we're not on an island here. Daniel Jeremiah mocked the same thing. So that's what got this conversation going. And we agree with Daniel Jeremiah. We'll have to get Reggie's take on this because, Luke, just for those who didn't maybe hear yesterday's show, summarize what we are saying, and keep in mind too, the Vikings have been ranked as the most negative fan base on social media, and we're experiencing that right now, aren't we? Like, everyone is sending their pitchforks at us. So give a quick little defense here, Luke, of what we're trying to say, and we'll see what Reggie thinks about it.
Well, yeah, listen, I know a lot of the feedback right now, a lot of the blowback, a lot of the heat we're taking, Sam, is everyone wants to make a big deal about the offense Hendon Hooker ran at Tennessee. And I totally get that. The tempo and like the style, little gimmicky, doesn't really translate to the next level. So I agree with the people there. But at the end of the day, you still got to go out and make these big time throws, which you did. And when you got Alabama's Will Anderson, a top 3 pick, you got Georgia defenders breathing down his neck in the pocket. He delivered big throw time and time again, 27-2 touchdown to interception ratio. And those are things that I think do transfer to the next level that you can get the most out of in the NFL. He played in the SEC, the toughest conference in the country. He was the Heisman Trophy candidate before he went down with the ACL injury. He led the SEC in completion percentage, so he's been highly accurate. In fact, more accurate than guys like Bryce Young and Will Levis, who are both going in the top 10 just from a numbers standpoint this year. And I think if you get him in the right system with KOC, let him sit for a year and bet on the tools like the Bills did with Josh Allen, not comparing apples to apples there, but the process is the same. And you bet on his leadership and the football IQ. I just think there's enough to warrant a first-round pick, taking a swing on a quarterback from where the Vikings are sitting all the way in the bottom of the first round at 23. Listen, all I've heard, too, especially during Combine Week, this guy's been crushing every single team interview he goes through. And I was listening to Move the Sticks with Daniel Jeremiah, who did mock Hendon Hooker yesterday to the Vikings at 23. He thinks the Vikings are definitely a team, maybe more than any other team, to keep an eye on moving up to go get a quarterback. So whether it's just staying put at 23 for Hooker, maybe you feel like you can trade down and get him, then go ahead, or moving up and taking a big swing for the fence on one of the big 4 names, Will Levis, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson. Feels like the Vikes, especially after not extending Kirk Cousins, are going to make a move for a quarterback in this upcoming draft.
Reggie, I'll kick it to you here in just a second. I just want to add a couple things onto what Luke's saying. Number one, there's a lot of steam right now around quarterback. Like the Vikings have been associated with Lamar Jackson. They've been mocked with Hendon Hooker. People are talking about them maybe even trading up and going to get one. There's just a lot of smoke right now connecting the Vikings to quarterback. Well, in the scenario where the big four are off the board, you can't trade up and get one. You don't want to give up that many assets. Would you rather gamble on a major project like Tanner McKee or anybody else? Or would you get the guy with the red flags, the age, the ACL, maybe the gimmick offense? That doesn't concern me. But a guy who has a strong arm, tons of athleticism, incredible work ethic. That's the guy that I'm okay with. People are pointing out, well, he had one good year. He didn't have one good year. He was 31 touchdowns, 3 interceptions the previous year at Tennessee. People are saying, well, he made a lot of ill-advised throws. He was lucky to only have 2 picks. He had the third fewest turnover-worthy throws in college football last year per PFF. And people saying, well, he was terrible in the pro-style offense at Virginia Tech. I mean, he wasn't asked to do anything. Like, he was still really mistake averse. He didn't make that many bad throws. He kind of did what he was asked to do, and he graded out pretty well at Virginia Tech in somewhat limited dropbacks. So I'm not as concerned about any of those red flags. But Reggie Wilson, you've been sitting idly by, waiting to chime in and knock us down a peg. What do you think?
All right, so I'm glad you brought up, Sam, his stats from 2021, because although the Volunteers didn't do as well, 7-6, you look at it, even going back to his Virginia Tech days, he made his first starts in 2019. First off, he's kind of old. He's 25 already. And so that's like, wow. Like,
he's old. He's not kind of old.
Yeah,
he's old.
Yeah.
He's a 90s kid.
Yeah.
Born in the 90s, one of the last ones.
Yeah, the year Peyton Manning got drafted number 1 overall coming from Tennessee, that was the year he was born. That's how far back we're going.
Okay, you guys done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. So it's kind of crazy. Yeah, he's a little old, but you look back even from his Virginia Tech days. So his first year starting, 2019, 61% completion percentage. And you're like, okay, that's not great. But if you look at his numbers, like the dude just grew each and every year. 65.3% completion percentage, 68 completion percentage. And then in 2022, a 70 completion percentage. That is insane. You know, a lot of people talked about, though, Joe Burrow being old when he came out. Well, maybe that just meant he was a little bit more NFL ready. Maybe Hooker is just a little bit more ready to play. That being said, I don't know that you take a quarterback coming off an ACL who is also older in the first round of this draft. I don't know if that's a sound thing for the Vikings. Now, it's funny. In some of these mock drafts that I have seen, I saw like all the receivers leave kind of early. I have had a crush on this guy for a long time, since watching him play this past season. At 23, if Quentin Johnston is there, you have to grab him. I was just telling one of my friends last night, these wide receivers these days coming out into the draft are so much more skilled than they've ever been coming out of college. And Quentin Johnston is a dude that has like Calvin Johnson-like ability. 6'4", big body dude, but also can run like a 4.4, 4.3, 4.4, 40. Like, the dude is an absolute monster. And you know, we talked a lot about the Kwesi competitive rebuild. What does that mean? And look, if they like a quarterback, if he's there and they like a quarterback, then okay, that's fine, I guess. But if you're trying to make this a bona fide offense this year, and you already have KJ Osborne in tow, you know, you got Jalen Naylor you drafted last year. He could be a nice complementary piece. But on the other side of Justin Jefferson, you have Quentin Johnston, a dude that can beat you over the top, kind of like a burner, even at his size, and just a highly skilled receiver who can catch a slant and take it all the way to the house. That is a scary thought in Kevin O'Connell's offense, and another weapon that Kirk Cousins can have this year to maximize whether or not they see a future with him moving forward or if they want to take a quarterback of the future. I don't think 23 is the spot to pick a quarterback. I just don't.
Luke's a huge Johnston fan. I like him too. I almost think that for Johnston to be available at 23, you kind of need to have him have a bad pro day, or you need to have him run slow. Or so, I'm not sure that he's there, but like Jordan Addison, he ran a 4.49. People aren't thrilled with his pro day. They didn't like his vertical. He feels more attainable. I don't know if Johnston's there at 23. Luke, am I seeing this clearly?
No, I think you're right. I personally, Jackson Smith and Jigba coming out of Ohio State, these Ohio State receivers coming out, they come out so clean, so polished. They have such a smooth transition. We've seen it time and time again. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. A lot of people expect Jackson Smith to do the same. He could be the first wide receiver off the board, but he didn't run the 40 because I think it's down to Jackson Smith or Quentin Johnston being the first wide receiver off the board. I look at last year's draft. I see the Falcons taking the first wide receiver off the board. Who was it? Drake London, USC, big-bodied athletic guy. The league right now just covets these X factors, these mismatch weapons, guys who can win consistently one-on-one. That's Quentin Johnston to a T. Big-bodied, maybe the best big man wideout with the ball in his hands, and I'm talking about yards after the catch, breaking big tackles, apparently rumored to run a 40 around the 4.4s, which would be crazy for such a big guy. If he runs anything close to that, I think he will be the first wide receiver off the board, and then Jackson Smith, but kind of 1 and 1A there, but I think they're both gone. I think it's a mute discussion by the time the Vikings are on the clock at pick 23. Both seem like top 15, top 20 guys at the latest, and you just look at the teams picking before the Vikings, there's a lot of teams who could justify taking a wide receiver there. So I love Johnson as well. Again, I think he's one of the best combinations of a big man with speed and athleticism, can go up and get it. You saw that 41.5-inch vert at the combine in Indy. He's special. I think he's long gone by the time the Vikings are on the clock. I'm with you, Sam.
And therefore, Reggie, that is why the Vikings will have no choice but to take Hendon Hooker, because the wide receivers will be gone. So,
well, hey, we had Russell Brown on from Fantasy Pros just a few days ago. He just came out with his brand new mock draft. He did have Quentin Johnston going to the Vikings at pick 23. So I'm just saying, yeah, it doesn't seem like he should be there, but we see it every year on the draft. I never thought in a million years Kyle Hamilton would drop all the way to the Vikings last year. He did. Did they take him? No. But my point is, things happen on draft night that we never expected, no matter how many mock drafts we look at, how many projections there are, how many predictions the experts make, like Mel Kiper and Todd McShay. Goofy stuff happens on draft night, so it wouldn't shock me.
And Luke, last year, from our show last year, I've been stumping for the Vikings to take a wide receiver since
that's right.
Last year, when I thought that they should go after Jameson Williams. He was there. They let the Lions take him instead. I think if they can get one of these bona fide guys, even if it's not Quentin Johnston at 23, if somehow Addison falls, if somehow Zay Flowers fall, like, you got to take one of these guys. I just think that it adds such a different element to the offense that's already going to be humming with Hawk and JJ. If they add another weapon, watch out. Because you take Hooker, you take Hooker and you have an asset, yes, but an asset that you don't even touch or use for probably a year.
And honestly, just to echo what you're saying, a lot of what Sam's been saying all offseason, double down on offense, double down on the receivers. Look at the Bengals with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and their success. Look at the Eagles with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Double down on these guys, so when one guy gets double covered, you have a guy who can consistently win these one-on-one matchups in between those two guys on the boundary. And like you said, having Hawkinson, KJ Osborne, going to be a free agent next offseason. Would be nice to have some sort of a contingency plan in case they can't retain his services next year as well. I'm with you, but I think at the end of the day, just taking a bigger step back, if Kirk Cousins isn't around, who's throwing these guys the ball? And I think at the end of the day, that's what me and Sam kind of just started to tap into a little bit, is we want to figure out what Kwesi and KOC is long-term game plan is if it's not extending Kirk Cousins. Who is the quarterback of the future?
A billion different angles to look at this from. Thanks for weighing in on that, Reggie. And comment below. I know you commented on yesterday's video, but if you didn't see that one, you can comment here. What would you think about Hendon Hooker at number 23? Let us know in the comments section here on YouTube at Locked On Sports Minnesota. We're also free and available wherever you listen to podcasts. Hey, you can also find us on the Roku and Amazon Fire Stick devices, the Locked On Sports Minnesota app. We got a bunch of wild trade scenarios to get to, and we're going to get to all of them here after I remind you that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's America's #1 sportsbook and the official sportsbook of Locked On. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets. If your first bet doesn't win, download that FanDuel app. Safe, secure, super easy to use. You can bet on every sport, every quarter or period or line. There's so many different ways to bet. 3-pointers drained, goals scored. You can put together the first basket getter in basketball, put a parlay together, and you can stack up your bets within the same game and win this a big payout with the same game parlays. Don't miss that chance at a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel.com/LockedOn to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel. All right, guys, let's get to some of these scenarios. Some more likely than others. Yeah,
Sam,
what's up?
Real quick, before you move on, I was just looking at these Hendon Hooker stats. His senior year of high school, he rushed for 1,200 yards and 27 touchdowns on the ground.
That's what I wanted to chirp in. This dude can run too. And I know he's coming off the ACL. I will say, just to play devil's advocate, he doesn't always keep his eyes downfield once he escapes the pocket. He's going to have to get a little bit better at that in the NFL. As soon as he decides to bail out, he tucks the ball and runs. He's gone. But he can run too. And I know he's a little bit older, and you don't want your quarterback necessarily moving around too much and taking a lot of big hits, especially at his age coming off the ACL. But that is a serious threat for a defense anytime you go out there and put this kid on the field. So, yeah, he's the total package, man. At 23, come on.
All right,
beggars can't be choosers.
Go ahead, Sam. Go ahead.
We're moving on. That is the great equalizer. If there are indeed some, issues with him diagnosing the defenses or what have you, the mobility is what cancels that out. All right, let's get into some trade scenarios. This is from T. Steeg. I took this from the YouTube comments. Could they trade Dalvin Cook and Zadarius Smith to Arizona, along with 2 future seconds, and get the number 3 pick in the draft?
Well, you know what this kind of reminds me of, this scenario? Do you guys remember 2018, the Bills, before the draft, before they moved up for Josh Allen from 12 to 8 or 7, I think it was, with Tampa, they were originally picking at like pick 23. They traded offensive tackle Cordy Glenn. I think it's
Cordy Glenn?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they moved up about 10 spots from 20 to 12, I think it was. Kind of similar range of where the Vikings are at now. So I don't think they could package Zadarius and Cook. I just don't think there's enough value, considering, again, Cook probably the most you can get around a 3rd rounder, just guesstimating. And then Zadarius, just given his age and the big contract, even though still an elite pass rusher, probably can't get more than, correct me if I'm wrong, tell me I'm nuts, but a 2nd rounder, guys, I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah.
Probably not enough to move all the way up into the top 5. But you look at a scenario like the Bills-Bengals trade in 2018, again, trading a established veteran who at the time, Glenn was pretty solid from what I remember. I don't necessarily want to label him a Pro Bowler, but he was a legitimate starter at left tackle. That moved him up 10 spots. And then having that done before the draft gave him enough time to kind of recoup, pick up the phone, and then on draft night, move up those last 4 or 5 spots for Josh Allen. So that could be a scenario in the same realm of possibilities that's getting flung out here that I could see maybe Zadarius and Dalvin Cook being packaged in.
Yeah, Reggie, Zadarius, Dalvin, and 2 seconds to get the number 3 pick. Do you think that works, or do you think the Vikings would need to tweak that offer for Arizona to say yes?
I guess my thought is, why? What are you moving up for? Do you really believe in one of the quarterbacks? Is that what it is? You want to take maybe a Will Levis or Anthony Richardson? Like, for one, the Colts seem to have played this thing all wrong, because I don't know. Like, we looked at Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft, and they just kind of get whoever's left as opposed to going and getting your guy. They need a quarterback. They've swung and missed on all these guys since Andrew Luck went down. And now you look at, Jacoby Brissett, Philly Riv, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, and now you have dropped to 4, and the top 2 guys are going to be gone. They're going to be gone. I mean, you could try to move up to the number 3 spot just so nobody else comes and intercepts you, and you don't get the guy that you do want after Young and Stroud. And I think that's the tough part. So I guess you only make a move like that if you're moving up to get a quarterback. And I don't know that the Vikings need to be that aggressive as it stands right now. And also, I just don't think that Hall is going to get what you think you should get, which is the 3rd round pick. Like, the guys are good guys, but you're kind of going away from what they're doing in the league anyway. Like Cook at that number, I don't think Arizona they need a running back that bad. Zadarius wants to get paid. They just let go of Marcus Golden out there. They just lost JJ Watt. Like, I get it. He could help, but like, I don't know if that's someone that they want to. Why do that when at 3 you can just stand there and get Will Anderson, and he's kind of like your pass rusher of the future, and you can maybe get one of these talented backs that are in the draft a little later. I don't really see what the upside is for Arizona on that trade.
Yeah, I think Reggie's right. I think, when you saw the Panthers move up from 9-1 with Chicago, first of all, everybody lost their mind. They thought the Panthers gave up way too much. Well, they had to leapfrog a team like the Colts and even the Texans, teams like the Raiders. I mean, there's so many teams right now in the top 10 and even teams behind them. Do the Titans want to move on from Ryan Tannehill? What are the Ravens going to do if they let go of Lamar? I mean, the Tampa Bay Bucks are in a situation they could be looking for a quarterback of the future. So many teams they had to basically win this bidding war with, but nobody was more bummed out, Reggie's right, than the Indianapolis Colts sitting at 4, because that just established, it just cemented in stone that the first 2 picks we're going to go quarterback, bang, bang. And like Reggie said, all of a sudden, maybe Arizona gets a call and somebody else leapfrogs them. Now they're sitting there with the 4th best option, probably Will Levis at that point, which again is just worst case scenario. When you're going into the draft process, sitting there at 4 with 4 great quarterbacks, you're thinking, all right, 1 or 2 probably likely going to go, but I still should have a couple options here. That may not be the case anymore. And one of the biggest benefits about the Panthers moving up with the Bears so early is now that they have 4 or 5 weeks to kind of let the dust settle, teams like the Colts may be forced to panic and hit that button and say, you know what, we got to give up the farm. And as crazy as it sounds, Carolina could move back because they could get a king's ransom from a team like Indy and get an offer they just can't refuse. So it's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out. I know Carolina took a lot of heat, is my point, initially for that trade, and they did give up a lot. That DJ Moore on top of it was just kind of the cherry on top. But the fact that they got it done so early could prove to be very beneficial, and they could end up moving back when this thing's all said and done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why the Panthers need even a new quarterback, because Adam Thielen said that Andy Dalton can win the Panthers a Super Bowl. So I don't think they really need that pick. Go. I mean, to answer the question, I just think that to move back from the number 3 pick in the draft, you got to get ones. You got to get first-round picks. Like Dalvin and Zadarius are depreciating assets. 2s are great, but I think you really want ones. You got to be blown away to move out of that spot. So I think Arizona says no in that case. They're not going to absorb $30 million in salary. Joel has a similar question, but just tweaked a little bit, and I think it's an interesting talker. He's wondering if the Vikings trade Cook and another vet for draft capital, do they do that so they can move up with those assets to get a QB in the draft, or do they stay put and just draft a player for need? So I guess the question is framed like this. If you do trade those veterans and get picks, how are you using them? Are you just staying? Are you just trying to add picks, or are you trying to package those picks to make a bold move up in the draft? Reggie, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it just depends on how you value Dalvin Cook. I think this particular offseason so far has shown that there's just not a high value on running backs. And so, I believe Dalvin Cook is a great running back in the league. I think he's a top 5 running back in the league, but you see what these guys are going for right now. You got Zeke on the street. He may not even find a team until probably training camp or something like that. Kareem Hunt, as good as he's been in the past, he's a free agent right now. Like, I just don't know that there's a lot of capital to gain if you do that deal. And so I think, you try to, if the goal is to trade him, you just try to get as much as you can to get what you can, I guess, for a guy like him and just try to go from there. But I think the tough part about it is just within, like, it seems like a year's time or so, the running back position is back to being devalued in the league, even though everybody needs one and everybody needs an effective running game to make things happen for their offenses. Like, they're still just not the valuable commodity that they were, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when you're seeing guys getting paid, Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott. I just think that's a tough one. That's a tough one. I don't know that you trading a guy like Cook and or another vet would get you what you need to move up to get a quarterback or, best available player. You might as well just kind of stand pat where you are.
Yeah, I mean, Reggie's right. Like, it depends on what you get, and I don't think you can expect to get much more than late day 2 picks, really, at most, for both those guys. And remember, that only gets you back up to even, only back to starting ground, because they don't have a second-round pick from TJ Hawkinson. They're missing a day 3 pick as well. You had the worst defense in the league last year. You've added some nice, maybe 1-2 year deals, some good pieces, but you also release Eric Kendricks, Cam Dantzler, Adam Thielen's gone now too. So, I mean, those picks only get you so far. If they were premium picks, it would be fun and enticing to drop some different scenarios and plans about, hey, you could package these and get all the way up into the top 5 and take whoever you want, whether it's a quarterback or Will Anderson, whoever it may be. But I think because they went into this offseason behind the 8 ball so much, just from a roster standpoint and salary cap situation as well, I think those picks really only get you back to even, because there's so much rebuilding that needs to be done, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, that you need those picks just to, give Brian Flores something to work with next year when he shows up to OTAs and training camp.
And ultimately, if you're trading up for a QB, you're giving up ones. You're giving up 2024 and 2025 ones. The picks in the middle of the rounds probably aren't nearly as important. Couple late questions coming in, including Seth, who wants us to choose our favorite move. He's given us 5 options. We're going to address that after I remind folks that the Built March Madness Challenge is still going on for Built Bar. BuiltMarchMadness.com. You can vote for your favorite bar or puff and enter for a chance to be one of 50 lucky Locked On listeners that get a free box of Built Bars. You can also be one lucky fan that wins a 12-month subscription to Built. Have them delivered right to your door. Why do you want to get these Built Bars? It's obvious. They're the best protein bar ever. Seriously. They're super amazing. You don't even know they're good for you, but they are. They're delicious. They are high in protein. They are low in sugar and calories. And they have some unbelievable flavors that are made with 100% real chocolate. So head to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now. Vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. Vote every day in March. So you got 9 days left. Hop in and support your pick. And speaking of picks, Seth on Twitter has given us 5 options. Pick your favorite, gentlemen. Which move would you choose for the Vikings? Trade for DeAndre Hopkins. Trade for Cortland Sutton. Trade for Jerry Jeudy. Sign Bobby Wagner. Or sign Odell Beckham Jr. Reggie, what do you think?
Oh, you definitely got to sign OBJ. But I think just the tough part about it is the cap space. You still got to sign these rookies. I guess they do still have decisions to make on guys like Cook and Zadarius, and that could free up some money if they decide to move on. But I think you probably go against the whole competitive rebuild thing if you trade for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, who I still believe is a top receiver in the league. Like, the dude is unreal. I mean, we saw it. That touchdown that he had against the Vikings this past season was unreal. I still think he's really good. And so, but you have to give up draft capital that I think you could use to help keep rebuilding this team as you like to, getting younger and faster and more explosive. And so I think maybe signing a guy like OBJ, that would kind of solve things. If you have Jefferson on one side and OBJ on the other side, then you maybe can draft Hooker in the first round of the draft, because you really
now he's on
don't
board.
necessarily need that. But I just don't know what OBJ commands. He made the tweet the other day saying like, hey, I'm not asking for the farm, but I at least want more than 4. And so I don't know what a deal like that looks like for OBJ. So I think that would probably be the best of the 4 options that you laid out, Sam. But the money, man, just got to make the money work somehow.
I'm going receiver first. I like Hopkins just a little bit more than OBJ. Still outstanding at the contested catches. Think he caught over 50% last year. 30 years old, though, plus, again, the contract. He only went when he got traded to Arizona for like a 2 1/5. I thought that was a steal at the time. Maybe he goes for even less now. So I think just from a trade compensation standpoint, I think he's well worth the move because he's 30, going to be 31. And again, like OBJ and what Reggie said, maybe the contract's just not quite as palatable. I think a guy like Jerry Jeudy, honestly, would make a little bit more sense just from what we've seen from Kwesi and the moves he's made this offseason. A little bit younger, still on a rookie deal, hasn't really tapped into how good he can be coming out of Alabama. I think at his best, he's most natural as some team's number 2 receiver, and I think he can be dominant there, and that just fits perfectly with having Justin Jefferson across from you. So Jerry Jeudy, I think, seems more realistic. Again, for all these scenarios, though, just depends on what kind of trade compensation we're talking about. Is it a 2? Is it a 3? Is it a 4? Something like that. It doesn't sound like a huge difference, but again, with such little draft capital as is, the difference between a future second rounder and this year's 4th rounder actually is quite a bit.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy would be my answer. It feels a lot like the Hawkinson trade. You're getting someone, a former first-round pick, in his 4th year. You would have him under team control in that 5th year because of the 5th-year option. Jerry Jeudy, super productive, young receiver, a lot of talent, and still a lot of upside, I think. And if he proves that he can be a piece, you can consider extending him. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know if you have the money. But you do have him for 2 years, which is key. And that's the way Kwesi has operated, is bringing in these guys that you have not only as a 1-year rental, but 2 years. Ross Blacklock, Jalen Reagor, TJ Hawkinson. He made sure that they got them into the building for more than just the 1 year. So Jerry Jeudy would be my answer because the salary makes sense. The talent makes sense. Jeremiah Sweeney also wants to know, which free agent would you like to see the Vikings sign? Maybe it's OBJ, but I think someone like Mecole Hardman is maybe a little more realistic at the wide receiver position, just from a salary standpoint. Kind of a gadget. His speed, his lateral quickness. You can use him on special teams, perhaps. Maybe he could replace Reagor as the punt returner. Hardman would be my guy. Are there any other free agents kind of still sitting out there, guys, that would catch your eye?
I'm looking at the list right now. There's not a ton. Again, just when you got to think about the cap constraints, there's not a ton that I really feel like you're getting a great bang for the buck. Paris Campbell, only 26 years old, speedster. Again, you're just looking for somebody to complement KJ Osborne, Hawkinson, and of course, Justin Jefferson. Mac Hollins. I think Mac Hollins actually just got signed the other day, so he's out. There's
Paris
not a
Campbell
ton of options
too.
out here, man. There's really not.
Campbell did too.
Yeah, Paris Campbell got
he
signed
did?
by the Giants. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. There's not it's looking thin out here right now.
Yeah.
Anything, Reg?
Yeah, I think what's funny is the guy I just mentioned. I don't know what the plan is for Dalvin Cook, but I think if some way they do decide to move on from Dalvin, I think signing a guy like Kareem Hunt would make a lot of sense for the Vikings, just because, like, He's played in that complementary back system before. He's also been the lead guy before when he was with Kansas City. I just think that he has a lot of talent, a lot of ability, not just as a runner, but as a guy who can come out of the backfield and make things happen as well. And we know that Kirk likes to dump it off from time to time if he can. Not from time to time. I think he was a little bit more apt to throw down the field last season more than he usually does. But I think giving that added dimension of a guy that you have to kind of watch out for in the backfield, and we know that KOC likes to utilize the running back as a passer. I mean, as a pass catcher. Your favorite, Sam, might be able to make some things happen in the screen game. I know that's your favorite, but
screen game.
Yeah, I think that could be something that could be intriguing. Him as kind of like a 1-2 punch with Alexander Madison and them just kind of carrying the load. I think that could be something.
I like that, Reggie. That's good stuff. Man, we covered a lot of ground today. Vikings trade scenarios. We defended our Hendon Hooker takes. That was a lot of fun. Make sure to comment below and subscribe on Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. Find us free and available wherever you listen to podcasts. And check us out tomorrow with Arif Hassan and Luke Braun with the full panel back on the Minnesota Football Party. Reggie, what's coming up at Kare 11 tonight?
Oh, man, we got the United. They have a new player that they're going to be announcing today at a presser at Allianz Field. Their new Korean player, of course, will be there for that. And we got the State Boys basketball tournament. Just a look ahead to the weekend. We got Larry McKenzie on with us talking hoops, just a ridiculous basketball mind. He's been great the last few times we've had him on. So really exciting stuff this weekend. Also, we're on Cat Watch tonight. Is he going to play? Is he not?
Give me a percentage.
Will Ant play?
Where are we at? 50-50? Is it?
Well, I mean, they raised him up. He's not out. He's questionable now. So that would seem to believe that there is a chance, but
he's playing. He's playing.
You think?
I don't think he sits down with Krasinski unless he knew he was playing this week.
All right. Well, we'll see. Chris Finch was on WCCO radio yesterday saying that he does not think that he's gonna play yet, but maybe
Finch is closer to it than me.
Well, but maybe it's posturing. I don't know. Who knows? It's such a weird thing with the Wolves. But yeah, those are some of the things we're keeping an eye on at Kare 11.
Yeah, maybe Ant plays at least. That would be welcome. So check out Reggie on Kare 11. Check out Luke Inman's NFL Draft Buzz newsletter. Subscribe to that at lockedonpodcast.com/newsletters. It's free. You get the rankings, you get the biggest stories in the NFL draft world, courtesy of our own Luke Spinman. Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Reggie. I'm Sam Ekstrom for Locked On Sports Minnesota. Talk to you tomorrow on the Minnesota Football Party.
Be blessed. Spread love this week.